Hello everyone, now let's talk about HTTP protocol. So HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So it's a client server model in which a client requests a particular resource from the server, whereas the server serves that resource to the client. So HTTP protocol is used for accessing a resource on the internet, and it is used to request a resource from the server. And here you can see the HTTP working. So here is our client, here is our server. So client requests a particular resource and the server will serves that resource to the client. Now let's talk about HTTP versions. So there are two HTTP versions, HTTP 1.0 and HTTP 1.1. So HTTP 1.0 is the older one, whereas HTTP 1.1 is a newer one and used nowadays. So in HTTP 1.0 we can request only one resource in a one connection, whereas by using HTTP 1.1 version we can request multiple resources from the server using a single connection. Now let's talk about HTTP 1.0 and HTTP 1.1 working in much more detail. So here you can see the HTTP 1.0 working. So the first of all, the client will send a request to the server for making a connection, and once their connection is established, the client will send a request for requesting a resource and the server will serve that resource. And once the client got that resource, here you can see that their connection breaks. So this was in HTTP 1.0, whereas in HTTP 1.1, let's see what happens. So by using HTTP 1.1 version, so the four steps are same. So make connection, connection established, client will request a resource, server will serve that resource. And then here you can see that once the client got that resource, the client is requesting another resource, and it's so on, and their connection will still remains until client wants to disconnect that connection. So this was the key advantage of HTTP 1.1 version, in which we can request multiple resources by using a single connection. Now let's talk about HTTP status code. So just for example, so you might have seen that while opening any website, sometimes the website gives us an error like 302, 404, 500 error. So what these kind of errors are? So these are called as HTTP status codes. So HTTP status codes are nothing but just a server response towards a HTTP request. So here are different kind of HTTP response codes you can see here, like 200, 400, 300, 500. So if we are successfully able to access our resource, then we got this HTTP response code, that is 200. So HTTP 200 response code is for OK or a success, and the response code which are responsible for the redirection is 301 and 302. And now just for example, we are trying to access any resource and that resource is not present on that server, then we got this HTTP status code, that is 404 not found. And in the last, there are two access HTTP status code, that is 500 and 503. So these are server side HTTP status code in which there might be a server error, and we got these HTTP status code 500 and 503 in that cases. So in order to send HTTP request, we also have to specify that what kind of HTTP method we want to use. Now let's talk about HTTP methods. So HTTP methods are types of requests which we want to send. Means we want to send an HTTP request, and what we have to do in HTTP request can be defined as HTTP methods. And here you can see the different HTTP methods like get, head, put, post, patch. So the get method is used for accessing any resource or fetching out any resource. So head method is used to see the server HTTP headers but not the HTML data, whereas the post and put methods are used for sending an input to the server. And there is one interesting method called as options. So if the user wants to know that what kind of HTTP methods are enabled on a remote server, then a user can send HTTP request by using options method, and in the response the user will see that what kind of HTTP methods are actually enabled on a remote server. And in the last, there is one method called as delete. So delete method is one of the dangerous methods, because by using a delete method, and if the delete method is enabled on any server, then a user can delete any particular resource on the server by sending a HTTP request by using delete method. So this was all about HTTP protocol. Now let's talk about three-way handshake. So what is three-way handshake? A three-way handshake is the first process before requesting any resource. So a three-way handshake is used for making a connection between a client and server or between two networking devices. So three-way handshake is the first process and it's a three-step method. Here you can see our client and here is our server. So the first of all, the client will send a SYN request to the server. So SYN means synchronize. So just for example, the client will say, hey, I'm new here, I want to connect with you. Now let's see what server give the response. So the server will send SYN and ACK. So SYN means synchronize and acknowledgement. So then the server send, okay, let's connect. And in the last, here you can see that the client will again send ACK, which means thank you. And here you can see their connection is established. So this is how the three-way handshake works. So in this video, we have discussed about what is HTTP protocol, its different versions and its HTTP status codes along with its methods and what is three-way handshake. Thanks for watching this video.